Mic check, guys. Send some reactions if you can hear me well.
Yes, I can hear you.
Awesome, awesome. Then we can start. Welcome back to Cryptic Talks, dear guys, the show where we dive deep into the ideas, technologies, and partnerships shaping the future of blockchain. I'm your usual host, Paul Speaks. And today we're unpacking a landmark moment in interoperability, the integration of ZetaChain in SUI. This is more than just another technical milestone. This is about building the universal fabric of Web3. For years, users and developers have struggled with fragmented ecosystems, risky bridges, and the constant friction of moving assets across chains. With ZetaChain's universal layer and SUI's move based high performance architecture, we're entering a new era where cross chain experiences feel seamless, secure, and most importantly, accessible. Joining me is Alex Kim, ecosystem lead at ZetaChain, who's here to share not just what, but the why and where next. We'll talk about how this integration changes the game for developers, what opportunities it unlocks for users from DeFi to NFTs to AI agents, and why Bitcoin and Sui together could be one of the most powerful liquidity flows in crypto. Welcome. Alex, if you can hear me, just feel free to give us some background thoughts, expectations for regarding today's episode, and of course, updates on your mood.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I think overall doing well. Yeah, I can't say anything more. Just a normal day here today in New York City. But yeah, great to be here.
Awesome. I think that this is our second episode, and I am very excited to have you here again because I really believe that Zeta Chain is doing something right here, and it's very valuable to share it with people across our audiences and viewers as well. First of all, I thought that Sui could join as well, but they canceled last minute. But anyways, I think that there's going to be a deep dive into the Zeta Chain's architecture anyway, and of course, I have prepared different questions with which I'm going to torture you today, Alex. I hope you can forgive me for that, and I hope that this torture can be sweet, though. Dear listeners, whether you are a builder looking for your next frontier, an investor tracking where capital will move, or simply a believer in a truly universal blockchain future, this episode is for you. Let's get into it. And the first question gonna be, why did Zeta Chain choose to integrate Sui at this point in time? And how does Sui's architecture, like its move-based execution model and high throughput, enhance your vision for universal interoperability?
Yeah, absolutely. We looked at Sui a couple months ago, and we identified different opportunities in the Sui ecosystem. First, there was a lot of stablecoin volume coming into Sui, and it was a rational decision for us because at the time there weren't a lot of bridges um, that were supporting Sui. And even some of the current bridging systems right now or bridging protocols don't fully support full assets on Sui. So a user can most likely only bridge only Sui asset, USDC, and maybe some other assets right now as well. So we were looking into it and we just saw a number of very, very high volume going to Sui. I think at one point there was about 200 million USDC that was being minted on Sui the last couple months. So these are opportunities that we identified, and we saw a lot of trading activity inside of DEXs, a lot of activity in their DeFi ecosystem as well as the gaming ecosystem. So it was pretty much a very eye-opening experience, and it was a telltale for us to finally integrate Sui.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that great breakdown. And yeah, thanks for sharing that, Alex. It's really interesting how you pointed out the gap with bridges not fully supporting SUI assets, because that shows why a deeper integration actually matters. A lot of times in the cross chain space, people talk about universal connections, but the details like whether assets are truly supported, make or break adoption. What you said about seeing $200, you said, millions in USDC volume on Sui over just the past few months really highlights that this isn't just theory, it's a real demand. And that kind of attraction shows that users are really already voting with their wallets, and the infrastructure needs to keep up. I think what's exciting is that ZetaChain stepping in here actually helps reduce friction for those users who otherwise feel stuck between ecosystems. And when you combine that with Sui's move based execution model, it's not just about speed, it's about safety and clarity in how assets are managed as well. So I think listeners will love that this is not just an integration for the sake of partnerships, but a response to what the market was already demanding. That kind of a user first mindset is what makes blockchain adoption move from hype to habit. And it's great to see Zeta Chains and Sui really leaning into that vision together. Though, also, how does this integration fundamentally simplify developer and user experiences, particularly compared to conventional bridge based interoperability, from your point of view, Alex?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty straightforward answer. Bridging protocols can only allow you to bridge assets from one chain to another. Um, there's a lot more use cases to be open with Zeta Chain and the Suite integration here. So if there was a yield aggregator product on Zeta Chain, let's say there's a money market on Suite, like Cetus, or I mean, like a DEX like Cetus, or maybe there is a money market on Suite as well. What you could do is build an application on Zeta Chain, a single state application. Sui is automatically integrated with all these different chains, and the user can connect their EVM wallet and use their EVM assets to deposit whatever asset from EVM and then deposit into this money market on Sui to earn, let's say, 5%. Bridging protocols only allow you to move assets from one chain to another, but when you're on Sui, there's not much that you can do besides there, right? So you have to go on the Sui ecosystem and do all these manual things again, right? Zeta Chain simplifies it. So in addition to sending your assets from one chain to another, like Bitcoin to Sui, you can call a smart contract on Sui to now do another smart contract action with the user's Sui, swap it for another asset, deposit it into a money market, or I don't know, stake it into a Sui protocol in a single click UI UX.
Thank you, Alex. I think that's a really clear way to explain the difference here. And I think it's click with a lot of people who's listening right now. With a traditional bridge, you're basically just moving an asset from point A to point B, and that's it. It's like having a one-way ferry, helpful but limited, and you can't really do much while you're on it. And what you're describing with Zeta Chain, though, it's more like having a whole highway system that lets you do things while you're traveling between chains. For example, I love how you put it. Someone can deposit from their EVM wallet and actually earn yield on Sui without needing to manually move over, set up, and manage assets themselves. That's a huge simplification because users don't want to deal with 10 steps just to earn 5%. From a developer's perspective, it also means, as far as I'm understanding, that they can build one app on ZetaChain and immediately tap into opportunities across chains rather than building custom bridge logic for each chain. And this smart contract composability is a real unlock because now staking, lending, and depositing can all be triggered in one flow without the user hopping around between platforms. Alex, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Again, I'm just trying to sum up some of your thoughts and put it in detail for listeners as well. But I really think it's not only you're not making it simpler, but it's also safer because this combination, simplicity for the user, power for for the developer, and less risk for everyone, feels like the trifecta that Web3 has been missing. And if listeners can picture that, they will immediately see how this a step forward compared to old school bridges. In a way, ZetaChain is doing for interoperability what smartphones did for computing. It's a kind of a collapsing multiple steps into one simple, seamless experience. And once people get used to that, going back to just a bridge will feel outdated, definitely. Mm, Also, sorry, I'm a little bit ill, so maybe you will hear that my voice is not pretty stable. But another thing that I also wanted to ask, which universal apps are leveraging integration already, and what kind of a use cases are emerging first, like DeFi, NFT, perps? What are you seeing here?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the ecosystem apps that are leveraging the Suite integrations already are Duxes, and we have a couple others that are working on it right now. But this could be our Duxes like Zuno or even Beam right now, which allows users to swap from one chain to another. And then we have some other universal apps that are working on the Suite integration as well. So this could be something like Yield Millionaire, which recently launched, which will allow a user to deposit USDC from Sui and then just have some yield exposure by being able to deposit that into money markets on ETH or Base without having to bridge or do anything else in a single click UI UX.
Awesome. I actually researched this question as well, and there are a lot of early use cases already leveraging data chain SUI integration and highlighting both the versatility of the technology and the pent up demand for seamless cross chain functionality. Zuno, as you mentioned, the cross chain DAX is a perfect example because trading has always been the first frontier for interoperability, and the ability to source liquidity from multiple ecosystems including Sui's high-speed environment, allows traders to get better execution without even realizing assets are moving behind the scenes. And there is correct me if I'm wrong, but there also another use case, yield aggregator Amana, right?
Yes, that's correct.
I think it also stand out because Yelp farming has always required cumbersome bridging between ecosystems, often leaving users frustrated or exposed to high gas costs. And by attracting those processes, Amana can now let users deposit in one place and earn yield strategies across many chains, including Sui, and without added friction. I think what excites me here is that the integration is not limited to one category. Yes, DeFi will likely dominate the early wave, but let's see, NFTs, gaming, and even AI-driven automations are all waiting in the wings. And by integrating Sui, ZetaChain isn't just like connecting liquidity pools. Mm, I think it's really unlocking entire new classes of applications. And the best part is that these aren't theoretical. Projects like Zuna and Amana are already live and or like onboarding. And that immediately means we're not talking about distant possibilities, but tangible user experiences happening right now. And this is how ecosystems mature, not by waiting for adoption, but by actively enabling it with real usable integrations. Also, your colleague Jonathan Covey mentioned that native BTC integration could unlock real capital flows and yield opportunities for SUI users. Why is this an important opportunity? How do you think this materializes actually?
Yeah, for sure. So in the Sui ecosystem right now, there's really no such thing as native Bitcoin. Even though a lot of those, maybe there are some um, articles out there that says that native Bitcoin is coming to Sui, or maybe there's Bitcoin coming over to Sui. It's actually not native at all. It's like some sort of wrapped Bitcoin equivalent, which is pretty much the same as the previous Bitcoin L2 narrative that we had about a year and a half ago. Nothing is using native Bitcoin at all. On Zeta Chain, what you can do is actually swap between native Bitcoin to some Sui assets. And it's pretty straightforward. The user only has to connect their Bitcoin wallets. They could connect their Unisat wallet, Xverse wallet, Leather wallet, any Bitcoin wallet. And as long as they have native Bitcoin, not some wrapped or bridged equivalent Bitcoin that's on EVM, or some other chains, you can swap that into Sui assets in a single click UI UX. And yes, the swaps will take a bit long, but that's what you get for having native Bitcoin.
Gotcha, gotcha. So I think it's very important clarification here. I think it makes the opportunity even clearer. Right now, most people think of BTC as kind of a, I don't know, sleeping giant asset, huge market cap, but not always easy to actually use in DeFi. And traditionally, if someone wanted to bring Bitcoin into another ecosystem, they'd have to wrap it or trust a custodian, which adds friction and risk. And what you're describing is different. Users can hold only a native BTC wallet, no extra layers, and still swap directly into Sui assets. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's powerful because if I'm understanding it correctly, it lowers the barrier for BTC holders who often don't want to deal with extra wallets or complex bridging steps. It basically says you don't need to change your behavior, just bring your Bitcoin and you can immediately access Sui's opportunities if it's, of course, native Bitcoin. And I think that for Sui users as well, this is another kind of audience that I think valuable to mention. That means fresh liquidity and new wave of capital entering the ecosystem. And for BTC holders, it's a way to put their assets to work beyond just holding without compromising on custody. Yeah, it's less about like BTC moving to Sui and more about ZetaChain making the connection invisible to the end user. And when something becomes invisible like that, it tends to scale fast because it feels natural. That's why I think Jonathan's point resonates. It's about bridging the biggest pool of crypto capital into one of the fastest ecosystems in a way that finally feels user first. And if that happens, we could see a real acceleration in both adoption and liquidity depth across Sui. Mm, Also, maybe another thing that I also wanted to ask you, Alex, by embedding interoperability at the consensus level, how does Zeta Chain addresses the security risks that plug breach based systems? Do you have any safeguards in place?
Yeah, for sure. So I think the context here is most bridges and even some other cross-chain protocols, their current security is using a multi-signature wallet. Some of these multi-signature wallets only require 2 out of 3 signatures in order to do something. We've seen a couple of instances where money markets or cross-chain markets got hacked and hundreds of millions of TVL was lost because the multi-sig wallet only required a very small number of signatures from the users or whoever the admins are to drain all the funds. This is pretty universal across most other bridging protocols as well. In the past, and I mentioned the Bitcoin L2s again, in order to quote unquote lock and mint a new Bitcoin equivalent version, it went through a multi-signature wallet. So pretty much the users were custodying their native Bitcoin into this multi-sig wallet, blindly trusting whoever it was behind it. And then the protocol itself was minting out a wrapped equivalent version of that Bitcoin based on that multi-sig. What differentiates ZetaChain is that the security is built into the protocol itself, meaning that the private key addresses for the Bitcoin custody addresses and everything else, like the Sui assets as well, is distributed amongst our subset of validators called observer signers. There's about 9 of them right now. Each of them have a very separate version and a portion of the TSS keys or the private keys of those custody addresses as well. So we do it on a validator managed custody. Very different from a traditional multi-sig as well. So that's how we address the security risks that currently plague other ecosystems and perhaps apps as well right now.
Interesting. I'm not just a tech person here, but thank you for explanation here. And to be honest, I need to even put this answer on repeat a little bit so I can understand better. But I think that like the Achilles heel of blockchain interoperability here, like has always been security, and bridges have unfortunately been some of the most like catastrophic points of failure in Web3, from my point of view at least. Billions have been lost because breaches often rely on external relays or multi-sig custodians that represent weak trust assumptions. And what ZetaChain has done differently is embed interoperability directly at the consensus layer, right?
Yes. Yes. So
Okay.
quote unquote bridging is built into the protocol itself.
hmm So it means the entire validator set collectively manages the process of custody and verification. You said you have around 9 validators right now, right?
No, so that's 9 observer signers. So in terms of validators, we have more than 50. But there's a second set of validators in the Zeta chain architecture that runs validators for all the other chains that we're connected with.
Okay, got it. So actually not just a design choice. It's kind of a fundamental reframing of how cross-chain value transfer should work. So by avoiding wrap tokens and instead creating zero C 20 is backed by native assets in validator managed custodies, that the chain removes many of the attack surfaces that plugged bridges. So.
That's
mm,
correct.
Mhm, mhm. Uh, Let me try to make an example. Like instead of minting an arbitrary wrap token on a destination chain, Zeta chain ensures that each asset is represented by a custody backed token. Whole security is directly tied to the validator set's consensus mechanism. And I think that that's a much stronger model because it aligns incentives across the entire chain rather than outsourcing security to a small group of actors. And additionally, these validators in ZetaChain's model are not simply securing one chain, but maintaining state awareness across multiple ecosystems, which gives them the context and, I guess, responsibility to ensure cross-chain operations are legitimate. I think, from my perspective, the real innovation is even psychological as well as technical. Users no longer have to trust a bridge, which has become a majority phase in Web3. Instead, they can trust the same consensus that secures the base chain itself. And that's the ultimate safeguard, making interoperability a native function rather than an external add on. I think with this approach, risks don't kind of vanish, but they are mitigated within a framework of collective responsibility and this cryptographic verification rather than depending on fragile third party infrastructure. You guys doing really good job and very innovative. At least from me, not non per se non technical person, I would never even get an idea that it is possible to do things like that. Though I would love also to dive into your roadmap that gonna deepen Sui's interoperability. Do you have any next steps planned already, especially like features like, I don't know, reverse interoperability, allowing BTC or Ethereum users to access apps?
Yeah, I mean, um, it really depends on the apps that are being built on Zeta Chain, but you can do some of these features already. So for example, in cases like the yield aggregator, you can deposit assets from EVM into Sui ecosystem apps as well to earn a certain reward rate or APY coming from those DeFi applications. Um, yeah, I think even with Zuno and our Dexons right now, you can swap between EVM assets to Sui assets as well. But it really depends on the apps that are being built on Zeta Chain.
Okay, okay, got it. So right now, the flow we have been talking about is mostly about SUI assets becoming accessible to outside ecosystems. But this reverse interoperability, like I mentioned with yield aggregators, opens the door for the opposite. Users from EVM or even BTC can tap into SUI native apps without friction. So instead of needing to become a SUI user first, they can simply bring what they already hold and get direct exposure. Right, Alex?
Yeah, exactly. So you can build an application on ZetaChain. Some of these
Mhm.
features are already live as well. You can, yeah, pretty much the DEXs that we talked about in the previous questions as well. It's all live. You can swap from EVM assets to SUI assets in a single click UI UX, and do further things with that in our next data chain upgrade as well to do further actions with it.
Mhm. So, for example, an Ethereum user could deposit Ethereum into a Zeta chain powered app, and under the hood, it could swap into SUI assets to earn yield, right?
Exactly. So when you swap into SUI, now the user's SUI on the SUI network will be deposited into whatever network or SUI app to earn a yield on it, like a money market or their staking platform.
Okay, that makes Sue's DeFi ecosystem very available to a much broader pool of capital than just those already on chain there. And I think it also makes things like liquidity mining or lending protocols more attractive too, because the base of potential depositors multiplies a lot. And it's not just like yield aggregators. I think that we could see this model extend to other spheres like gaming NFTs or any app that benefits from fresh liquidity and new users. And from my perspective, beauty is that the complexity of moving between chains disappears for the end user. That I think that really expands the funnel of who can become a Sui app user, because you don't have to onboard them with new wallets or assets. And on the roadmap, I imagine that means building more generalized tools so any developer can plug reverse interoperability into their apps. It's almost like APIs or SDKs that let them say, okay, I want Ethereum, BTC, and USDC users to be able to join my Sui app instantly. And that kind of a toolkit would accelerate real adoption, because builders won't need to reinvent the wheel each time. And for users, it feels like Sui is suddenly everywhere, even if they're never downloaded the Sui wallet. That's a big unlock because ecosystems grow fastest, uh, yeah, ecosystem grow fastest when access points multiply as well. And I think that the next step isn't just like deeper technical integration, it's making those integrations usable for everyday developers. So in many ways is the ultimate goal of interoperability, not just connecting chains, but making them invisible to the people who use them. And as we talk a little bit about the developer experience and what they can do here, maybe we can dive deeper into specific tooling like SDKs, templates, move adapters, testing sandbox. What are you providing to make it easy for Sui builders to create a universal apps on the chains from day one?
Absolutely. So we have a number of toolkits already available on the Zeta Chain ecosystem. So the way that it works for a developer is you simply deploy your smart contracts that are EVM compatible on Zeta Chain. There's nothing you have to do for the Sui ecosystem. Once you have your smart contracts deployed on ZetaChain, you can just enable your front end to allow Sui wallet connections, and ZetaChain will handle the rest. That's it. We already have a number of SDKs that provide all the tooling for some of these things as well, such as the wallet connection, smart contract deployments, and such, as well as different EVM smart contract templates that are already live. And we have our own testing environment, local net as well, on ZetaChain. But yeah, for the developers, you're building on ZetaChain, and you enable the front end for all these different chain connections.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you, Alex, for bringing that to the listeners as well. I think that one of the biggest challenges for any new integration isn't just like the infrastructure, the developer experience as well. Builders need clear pathways to experiment, test, and deploy without having to like reinvent the wheel. And with ZetaChain-Sui integration, the focus has been on delivering like a complete set of developer tooling from day one, as I can hear what you're describing, so that builders can immediately start creating these universal apps. And I think that for the Sui ecosystem specifically, more adapters are a critical piece of the toolkit as well, which can allow Sui developers who are already comfortable with move to integrate Zeta chain functionality without having to step outside their comfort zone. And this is important because if you want to attract the best developers, you need to meet them where they are. Testing sandboxes and simulation environments are also being rolled out as far as I read, but as a host here, I think the bigger story is how this tooling lowers the barrier of entry for innovation. And the reality is great ideas often never see daylight because the infrastructure is too daunting. And by giving so developers access to SDK adapters and different sandboxes, toolkits, ZetaChain is making interoperability something you can plug in with confidence and not a mountain you have to climb. So that has enormous implications for creativity. Suddenly, even smaller teams can launch universal apps that compete at scale. And from day one, the tools aren't just there to help people build, they're there to help them imagine more freely. And that ultimately is what accelerates ecosystem growth as well. But as I already asked some like a little bit about roadmap part. Do you have any near-term metrics that you're gonna track to gauge the success of this SUI integration? I don't know, active universal apps, cross-chain, TX count SUI deposits, or BTC SUI rotated volume. What kind of targets are you comfortable sharing for the next 2 quarters if you have some?
Yeah, absolutely. So our success metrics for the Suite integration is number of universal apps are deployed on Zeta Chain that allows the Suite integration in their front ends, and definitely cross-chain transaction counts between Sui, Zeta Chain, or Sui to other chains powered by Zeta Chain as well. I think something interesting could be Bitcoin to Sui related volume. Um, but yeah, I think it's just pretty interesting to see what chains are going to be bridged into Sui. I think historically, some of these metrics are pretty outdated, like the Bitcoin Sui routed volume. I don't think there's a lot of Bitcoin to Sui bridging these days anymore anyway. But we could come up with our own metrics to make sure that it targets the cross-chain transaction count. And for us to get better insight of who from what chains are swapping from one chain to Sui as well. Um, yeah, in the next 2 quarters, I think it's pretty hard to say. The Sui integration just went live this month. So we don't really have any results right now because it's only been a couple weeks, but so I don't know what the next 2 quarters are going to look like, but those are definitely our near-term success metrics right now.
Got it, got it. Thank you, Alex. Thank you for sharing that. Um, I think that that's great point, and I love how you brought up like different metrics as well, like cross-chain transactions, universal apps right away. It really shows where the focus is because those two at least feel like the heartbeat of whether their integration is actually working in practice. And when you start to see people moving value across chains smoothly, that's when you know the pipes are solid. And with universal apps, adoption is such a clear signal since developers won't build unless the experience is actually worth it. I also like that you hinted like regarding other criteria too, because it reminds me that sometimes the most surprising metrics show up from places we don't expect. For example, maybe it's the speed of confirmations, right? Or the drop in failed transactions, or that end up being just as telling. And the idea of watching how many new chains get added is exciting too, because that speaks to network effects as well. On chain is useful, but like one chain is useful, but three, five, or 10 make the whole system way more compelling. It's like social media. No one wants to join if only two people are there. But once the network grows, the value multiplies too. And what's also cool that I noticed that the more chains get connected, the more the data fits into itself. And suddenly you can measure not just activity within one app or one token, but how value helps across ecosystems. And that's a story developers and investors both care about, just from different angles. And it also gives you some flexibility in how you define success in the early quarters too. Maybe quarter one is about like proving people actually transact, and the quarter two is about showing growth and new chains supported. I will follow your socials and gonna watch closely, and gonna support every new milestone and new heads that you're going to achieve in any kind of a metric that you will choose. But hearing you say cross-chain transactions and universal apps gives me confidence. You're looking at the foundation and not just surface hype. And I imagine that mindset will set you up to make smart adjustments as the next quarters unfold. And I'll be fun to check back. Check back in. And I guess I have only one question left for you. Time flies, but we actually got through all my enormous amount of questions really fast. Though maybe you can share, Alex, with us how are fees handled as well for Sui users interacting with apps on other chains via Zeta chain, like gas abstraction or transactions or sponsorship. Like, what are you doing to keep cross chain UX truly one click under mainnet load?
Yeah, I think the answer for this is very simple. When you do cross-chain swaps or cross-chain interactions on ZetaChain, we remove it from your source and destination asset. So the gas on Sui is deducted from your deposit on Sui, and the gas that you pay on the destination asset is just deducted from your final asset as well. So it is truly is a single-click UI UX. For swaps into ZetaChain or swaps on ZetaChain, you're going to pay a Zeta fee. But most of the apps do a gas sponsorship through gas abstraction providers already on ZetaChain. So there's a Paymaster account, and these apps pretty much sponsor users' gas transactions on ZetaChain already. But yeah, the answer is pretty simple. For cross-chain transactions from one chain to another, it's deducted from your source and destination asset. Swaps on ZetaChain is handled through gas abstraction or some other gas sponsorship solutions right now.
Got it. Yeah, really. It is really simple. I agree with you, but it actually makes a lot of sense, and I think users will appreciate the clarity. So basically, if I'm a Sui user doing a cross-chain swap, the fees come straight out of the source asset, and that feels intuitive because people are already used to paying gas from whatever chain they start on. Then on top of that, there's a Zeta fee when the actual swap happens on Zeta chain, which is like fair since the protocol is doing the heavy lifting. And I like that it simplifies the mental math for users. They don't need to juggle tokens from multiple chains just to cover fees. That kind of a headache is what usually scares people away from cross chain activity. But what I'm hearing is that you're really aiming for that one click in practice, not just in marketing language. And honestly, that's the gold standard. Users shouldn't have to think about six different gas tokens to move assets. And the idea of gas abstraction or sponsorship is great, like in theory, but the way you're framing it, pulling directly from the source, sounds much cleaner, and it keeps the process predictable, which is huge when transactions are flying under like minute load. Because at scale, I think that every extra prompt or confusion point becomes friction. Though I also think that this model helps with transparency since users can see upfront exactly what they'll pay without surprises. And by keeping the flow simple, service fee plus data fee, you're paving the way for a smoother mass market experience. And I'm excited to see how it holds up once managed traffic really rumps. Yeah, I hope that I didn't say any incorrect thoughts here. Again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's probably gonna be a wrap on our today's episode of Cryptic Talks, guys. And what we have heard today is clear. The data chain SUI integration isn't just about two chains connecting. It's about reshaping how the entire Web3 ecosystem thinks about interoperability. We explored together with Alex how developers now have the tools to build universal apps without the headaches of bridges, how users can interact with cross-chain dApps in just one click, and why unlocking Bitcoin liquidity on Sui could rival the biggest players in the space. And most importantly, we have seen how embedding interoperability at the consensus layer turns security into a feature and not an afterthought. And yeah, I think that I would love to extend huge thank you to Alex for joining us today and sharing clear answers here too. Thank you so much, and I would love to have more spaces together, Alex. Thank you.
Absolutely.
If you have
Thank
some,
you.
if you have some thoughts, final thoughts for our listeners, feel free to share.
Yeah, I would say just experiment with the Zeta Chain ecosystem. There are a couple of universal apps already live. You can swap between Bitcoin to non-EVM chains as well in a single click UI UX. We have our own grants program as well for developers that want to get involved and build something new on Zeta Chain. We're very open ears, so please feel free to explore the ecosystem. And if you're interested in building, just let us know.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alex. And that was a wrap. I'm Paula Speaks, and this has been Cryptic Talks. Signing off for today. Thanks to you, Alex. Thanks to our listeners for tuning in. Be sure to drop a follow to Cryptic and the Chain official account for more conversations at the edge of innovation. And until next time, keep building, keep learning, and keep believing in a truly connected Web3. Thank you, guys. Have a good rest of the day, morning, or evening. Ciao, ciao.
Thank you.